The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in the year 2347. Ambassador Daniel Cole was drinking his coffee in the Earth Alliance Command Center when the main screen lit up with symbols no human had ever seen before. The room went quiet. Every officer stopped what they were doing and stared at the strange writing that filled the display. Daniel put down his cup and walked closer to the screen. He had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Humanity had always known they were not alone in the universe. They had found ruins on distant planets. They had detected signals from far-away stars, but no one had ever spoken to them directly until now. The translation software took 3 hours to decode the message. When it was finally readable, Daniel felt his stomach turn cold. The message was not a greeting. It was not a welcome. It was a demand. The Galactic Council, a government made up of 17 alien species, had finally noticed humanity, and they were not happy about what they saw. Daniel read the message out loud to his staff. The Council accused humanity of breaking something called the Expansion Accords. These were laws written 10,000 years ago, long before humans had even discovered fire. According to these laws, any new species that developed space travel had to ask permission before settling on new worlds. They had to accept whatever territory the Council gave them, and they had to pay tribute to the older species in the form of resources and labor. Humanity had done none of these things. For the past 200 years, humans had spread across 47 star systems. They had built colonies on planets the Council considered worthless. They had mined asteroids and harvested energy from distant suns. They had done all of this without asking anyone for permission, because no one had told them they needed to ask. Now the Council was angry. The message gave humanity 60 days to send representatives to a place called Axiom Prime. There they would face judgment for their crimes. If they refused to come, the Council would consider it an act of war. Daniel contacted Admiral Laura immediately. She commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from her flagship, a massive warship called the Endeavor. Laura was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought in 3 border conflicts and had never lost a battle. When she heard about the message, her face grew hard. She arrived at the command center within the hour. Daniel showed her everything: the message, the translation, the demands. Laura read it all twice before speaking. "They want us to become their servants," she said. "That is what this means. They want us to give up our colonies. They want us to reduce our fleet. And they want our people to work for them like slaves." Daniel nodded. "The tribute period they mention is 300 of their cycles. Our experts say that equals about 400 Earth years." Laura let out a bitter laugh. 400 years of slavery, and they call themselves civilized. Commander Brooks joined them a few minutes later. He was Daniel's chief advisor, a young man with a sharp mind and a talent for finding information. He had already pulled together everything humanity knew about the Council species. There were the leaders. They were ancient beings made of living crystal. They considered themselves the most moral creatures in the galaxy. They had written the original accords and they enforced them without mercy. There were the soldiers. They were massive reptilian warriors who lived for combat. The Council used them to punish any species that broke the rules. Their fleet was the largest in known space. The other 15 species filled various roles. Some were scientists. Some were traders. Some were simply survivors who had learned long ago that obeying the Council was easier than fighting it. "Spread his research across the table. None of these species developed on their own," he said. "They found them when they were young. They guided their development. They gave them technology in exchange for loyalty. That is how the Council works. They find new species and they absorb them." "But they did not find us," Laura said. "No, we grew up alone. We developed our own technology. We built our own ships. By the time they noticed us, we were already too strong to simply absorb." Daniel understood what was saying. The Council was used to dealing with young species who depended on them for everything. Humanity was different. Humanity had built itself from nothing, and that made humanity dangerous. The three of them talked for hours about what to do. Some advisors wanted to fight. They said humanity should refuse the summons and prepare for war. Others wanted to negotiate. They said humanity should go to the council and try to get better terms. A few even suggested surrender. They said humanity could not win against an alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Daniel listened to all of them. Then he made his decision. "We will go," he said. "We will hear what they have to say, but we will not bow, we will not beg, and we will not accept any deal that treats humanity as less than equal." Laura nodded her approval, began making preparations for the journey. The news spread across human space within days. People reacted in different ways. Some were afraid. They had heard stories about thee and their brutal methods. Others were angry. They did not like being told that their homes and their lives belonged to aliens they had never met. A few were hopeful. They thought this might be the beginning of a new era, a time when humanity would finally join the larger community of intelligent life. Daniel felt all of these emotions himself, but more than anything he felt determined. Humanity had come too far to give up now. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived wars and disasters. They had climbed out of the mud and reached for the stars. No ancient council was going to take that away from them. On the day the delegation departed for Axiom Prime, Daniel stood on the bridge of the diplomatic ship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 17 species were waiting to judge humanity. They expected submission. They expected fear. They were going to be very surprised. The journey to Axiom Prime took 17 days. Daniel Cole spent most of that time studying. He learned everything he could about council customs and protocols. He memorized the names of important leaders. He practiced phrases in 3 different alien languages. He wanted to be ready for anything. The delegation consisted of 12 people. Admiral Laura came in her formal uniform, every metal polished and every button shining. Dr. Price, the best language expert on Earth, came to help with translation. Commander Brooks came to advise and observe. The rest were diplomats and security officers, all chosen for their skill and their courage. When their ship finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, everyone on board went silent. Axiom Prime filled like a metal moon. The station was enormous, larger than any structure humanity had ever built. Its surface was covered with towers and domes and landing platforms. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. A cold voice came through the communication system. It directed them to a specific landing bay and warned them not to deviate from the assigned path. Daniel ordered the pilot to follow instructions exactly. There was no point in causing trouble before the negotiations even began. The landing bay was vast and empty. A group of aliens waited for them at the bottom of the boarding ramp. They were tall and thin with pale blue skin and large black eyes, whispered that they were one of the minor species that served the council. They guided the human delegation through a maze of corridors without speaking a single word. The council chambers were designed to make visitors feel small. Daniel realized this the moment he stepped inside. The room was shaped like a bowl, with 17 massive platforms arranged in a circle around a tiny stage in the center. Each platform rose high above the floor, forcing anyone on the stage to look up at the council members like a child looking up at adults. The platforms were already occupied. Daniel studied each one as he walked to the center stage. The representative sat on the highest platform. His body was made of purple crystal that caught the light and scattered it in all directions. He looked ancient and powerful and completely without mercy. The representative sat on the second highest platform. He was huge, easily 3 times the size of any human. His scales were dark green and his eyes were yellow with vertical pupils like a snake. He watched the humans with obvious contempt. The other 15 platforms held creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some had fur. Some had feathers. Some had no features Daniel could recognize at all. They all watched in silence as the human delegation took its place on the small central stage. The spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder in a cave. Species designation human. Origin Sol system, third planet. You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your crimes. Daniel felt Laura tense beside him. He gave her a small signal to stay calm. The continued. You have expanded into 47 star systems without authorization. You have harvested resources from protected zones. You have developed military technology without oversight. These are violations of the Expansion Accords, laws that have governed this galaxy for 10,000 years. Daniel waited until the finished. Then he spoke in a clear and steady voice. We were not aware of these laws. No one contacted us. No one told us these restrictions existed. This crystal body flickered with what might have been annoyance. Ignorance does not excuse violation. The accords exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The leaned forward, his massive weight making his platform creak. The penalty for such violations is severe. Your colonies will be relocated to approved zones. Your fleet will be reduced to defensive capacity only. You will provide labor tribute to the elder races for 300 cycles. Price leaned close to Daniel and whispered the translation. 300 cycles meant 400 Earth years, 4 centuries of forced labor. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye was fixed on the human delegation. They were waiting for the humans to accept their punishment. They were waiting for submission. Daniel looked at his people. Laura stood straight and proud, her hand resting near her sidearm. Watched the council members with calculating eyes. Held her translation device steady despite the tension. Daniel turned back to face the council. No, he said. The word was simple. The word was quiet, but it echoed through the chamber like a bomb going off. This crystal body went dark for a moment. Our translation systems must have made an error. Please repeat your response. Daniel took a step forward. He refused to look up at the platforms towering above him. He spoke to the council as an equal, not as a subject. I said no. Humanity does not accept these terms. We will not relocate our colonies. We will not reduce our fleet. We will not provide slave labor to species who never bothered to introduce themselves until they wanted something from us. The rose to his full height. His claws scraped against his platform with a sound like knives on stone. You dare refuse the council? We do more than refuse, Daniel replied. We reject your authority completely. You have no power over humanity. You never did. And if you try to take what is ours by force, you will learn how dangerous it is to threaten a species that built itself from nothing while you sat comfortable in your ancient halls. The chamber erupted in noise. Several species began talking at once. The roared something in his own language that the translation device rendered as a string of threats. The pulsed with bright, angry light. Daniel ignored all of it. He turned to his delegation. We are leaving. They walked out of the council chambers without permission. They did not bow. They did not follow the proper protocols. They simply walked out as if the most powerful government in the galaxy meant nothing to them. No species had ever done this before. In 10,000 years of council rule, no one had ever said no. No one had ever walked away. Behind them, the council descended into chaos. The demanded immediate military action. The called for order. Several minor species sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. And somewhere in the crowd, a small alien named watched the humans leave with something strange in her eyes. It took her a moment to recognize the feeling. It was hope. The human delegation returned to their quarters on Axiom Prime in complete silence. No one spoke until the doors were sealed and the security systems were activated. Only then did Laura allow herself to breathe. Well, she said, that happened. Daniel Cole sat down heavily in a chair. The adrenaline was wearing off and his hands were starting to shake. He had just told the most powerful government in the galaxy to go to hell. Part of him could not believe he had actually done it. Brooks immediately began setting up secure communications with Earth. They needed to warn the Alliance about what had happened. They needed to prepare for whatever came next. Price was reviewing her recordings of the council session. She played back the reactions of each species, watching their body language and facial expressions over and over again. "They are furious," she reported. "They will push for war. Their entire culture is built on military dominance. They cannot let this insult stand." "What about the others?" Daniel asked. Zoomed in on several of the smaller platforms. "That is what interests me. Look at the ambassador, and they did not look angry when you refused the council. They looked surprised, almost hopeful." Laura frowned. "Hopeful about what?" "I am not certain yet, but I think there are cracks in the council that we did not know about. Not all of these species are happy with the current order." Daniel filed that information away for later. Right now, they had more immediate concerns. The next 12 hours were tense. The humans remained in their quarters, waiting for something to happen. Guards appeared outside their door, not attacking, just watching. The council was deciding what to do with them. Finally, a message arrived. The High Arbiter was granting them permission to leave Axiom Prime, but they were warned that the council would be discussing military options. Humanity should prepare for consequences. Daniel ordered the delegation back to the ship immediately. They were in space within the hour, racing toward human territory at maximum speed. Back on Axiom Prime, the council convened an emergency session. The chamber was filled with angry voices and accusations. The warlord, whose name was, demanded immediate action. "These humans have humiliated us before the entire galaxy," he roared. Every minor species watched that recording. Every servant race heard a single primitive creature tell us no. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, our authority will crumble. The High Arbiter, whose name was, raised a crystalline limb for silence. "We must consider this carefully. The humans have developed technology we have not seen before. Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are unknown. A hasty attack could end badly." "Are you suggesting we are afraid of them?" snarled. "I am suggesting we are wise enough to know our enemy before we strike." The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted war. Some wanted negotiation. A few suggested simply ignoring humanity and hoping they would go away. But everyone knew that was not really an option. The humans had challenged the council publicly. A response was required. In the end, the won the argument, was authorized to assemble a fleet and bring humanity to heel. 200 warships would be deployed, the largest military action in 3 centuries. The message was clear. The council was not afraid. The council was simply being thorough. Ambassador of the sat silently through the entire debate. She was a small creature with soft gray fur and large, intelligent eyes. Her species had served the council for 6,000 years. They paid their tribute. They followed the rules. They had forgotten what it felt like to resist. But watching the humans had awakened something in her. They were young and foolish, and they had no idea what they were facing. But they had done something no one else had dared to do. They had said no. After the session ended, returned to her quarters and sat in the dark for a long time. She thought about her people. She thought about the tribute they paid every year, the resources stripped from their worlds, the children sent to work in mines. She thought about all the things her species had accepted because they believed there was no other choice. Maybe there was another choice. Maybe the humans had just shown them what it looked like. On Earth, the news of what happened at Axiom Prime spread quickly. Daniel Cole addressed the Alliance Assembly as soon as he returned. He told them everything: the accusations, the demands, the refusal, the walk out. The assembly reacted with a mixture of fear and pride. Some members demanded to know why Daniel had not tried to negotiate. Others praised him for standing up to alien bullies. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what this meant for the future. Admiral Laura presented her military assessment. "The will come," she said. "They have no choice. Their entire society is built on the idea that they are the strongest. We just told them they are not. They will try to prove us wrong." "Can we win?" someone asked. Laura considered the question carefully. "We have 80 warships in active service. More are being built, but they will not be ready in time. They will likely send at least 200. By the numbers, we are outmatched." A murmur of fear passed through the assembly. "However," Laura continued, "numbers are not everything. Our ships are faster. Our weapons are different from anything they have seen. And we will be fighting in our own territory, defending our own homes. History is full of examples where a smaller force defeated a larger one because they had something worth fighting for." Daniel stood up to address the assembly one final time. "We did not ask for this conflict. We offered peace and were given demands. We offered respect and were given contempt. Now we must defend what we have built. I believe we can do it. I believe humanity is stronger than they know." The assembly voted that night. It was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would fight. Across human space, the war preparations began. Shipyards worked around the clock. Soldiers trained for battles against enemies they had never seen. Civilians prepared shelters and stockpiled supplies. And in the darkness between stars, 200 warships began their journey toward human territory. Warlord stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. He was going to enjoy this. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The fleet arrived at the edge of the Cygnus system 3 months after the council session. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons and armored with plates thick enough to stop a small asteroid. Warlord stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed his forces with satisfaction. This was the largest deployment in 300 years. There had not been a real challenge to council authority in living memory. Most military actions were simple punishments, a few ships sent to destroy a rebellious colony or capture a disobedient leader. But this was different. This was a proper war. Had studied the human recordings carefully. He had watched Daniel Cole refuse the council. He had seen the defiance in the ambassador's eyes. Part of him respected it. Courage was something valued above almost everything else. But respect did not change what had to happen. Humanity had to be broken. The galaxy had to see what happened to species that said no. The Cygnus system was one of humanity's oldest colonies. 3 million people lived on its primary world. Factories on its moons produced ships and weapons for the human fleet. Had chosen it as his first target deliberately. Destroying it would hurt humanity badly. It would show them that resistance came with a price. The human fleet was waiting for them. Admiral Laura had positioned her ships in a defensive arc between the and the inhabited planet. 80 vessels faced 200. From a distance, it looked like a joke. The ships were twice the size of the human ones. Their fleet stretched across space like a wall of metal. Laura stood on the bridge of the Endeavor and watched the enemy approach. Her face was calm. Her hands were steady. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Every battle she had ever fought had been practice for this. "All ships," she said quietly, "prepare for engagement." Expected the humans to run, or at least to try to negotiate. That was what smaller species always did when they saw the full might of the fleet. They begged for mercy. They offered surrender. They did anything to avoid the slaughter that was coming. The humans did none of these things. They held their position. They powered up their weapons. They waited. Smiled courage, he respected it, but it would not save them. "All ships," he commanded, "attack." The fleet surged forward. Their weapons began firing, filling space with energy beams and explosive projectiles. The first shots were meant to intimidate, to show the humans what they were facing. And then the human ships began to move. They did not move like any ships had ever seen. They did not fly in straight lines or predictable formations. They danced. They twisted. They seemed to know where the weapons would be before they were fired. Shot after shot missed completely. Laura watched her tactical display and smiled. They were using the same fighting style they had used for thousands of years. Stand in a line, fire everything, crush the enemy with overwhelming force. It worked against species that fought the same way. It did not work against humans. Attack pattern Delta, she ordered. Target their engines first. The human ships split into small groups and dove toward the fleet from multiple angles. Their weapons were different from anything they had encountered. Instead of the standard energy beams the Council species used, the humans fired something that passed right through shields. Explosions blossomed along the hulls of a dozen ships. Stared at his display in disbelief. 3 of his ships were already disabled. 2 more were on fire. His weapons were hitting nothing but empty space. "How are they doing that?" he demanded. No one had an answer. The battle lasted 47 minutes. It should have been a massacre. 200 ships against 80. The outcome should have been obvious. Instead, it was chaos. The humans fought like nothing they had ever seen. They appeared where they were not expected. They vanished before weapons could lock on. They coordinated with each other perfectly, each ship supporting the others in patterns that seemed almost like magic. Their weapons punched through armor like it was made of paper. Laura sat at the center of it all, watching everything, directing everything. She had trained her crews for years. She had run thousands of simulations. She had prepared for exactly this situation, and now all that preparation was paying off. When the last ship finally retreated, the numbers were clear. 63 vessels had been destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 12. Warlord stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship and could not understand what had happened. He had brought the largest fleet in history. He had faced a species that had only been traveling through space for a few centuries, and he had lost. The retreat back to Council space was the longest journey of his life. He knew what was waiting for him: disgrace, mockery, the end of everything he had built, the measured worth by victory. He had just suffered the worst defeat in their history. On Earth, the news of the victory spread like fire. People celebrated in the streets. Soldiers cheered on their ships. For the first time, humanity knew for certain that they could fight the Council and win. Daniel Cole addressed the Alliance Assembly again. His words were carried across every human world. "We did not seek this conflict," he said. "We offered peace and were given demands. We offered respect and were given contempt. Now we have shown the galaxy that humanity will not bow to those who consider themselves our masters, but we are not conquerors. We will not become what they are. When the Council is ready to treat us as equals, we will return to the table." Across the galaxy, other species watched the recordings of the battle. The species that had lived under Council rule for thousands of years. Species that had always believed resistance was impossible. They had just watched 80 human ships defeat 200 vessels. They had just watched a young species stand up to the oldest power in the galaxy and win. Ambassador of the sat alone in her quarters on Axiom Prime and composed a secret message. She encrypted it carefully and sent it through channels the Council did not monitor. The message was addressed to Ambassador Daniel Cole. It was simple and short. "You have done something remarkable. The Council is not as united as it appears. There are many who would welcome a new order. If you are willing to listen, I have much to tell you." In the darkness between stars, the shape of the galaxy was beginning to change. 6 months passed after the Battle of Cygnus. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen next. They licked their wounds and plotted revenge. They debated endlessly about how to respond. and throughout council space, the minor species whispered to each other about what they had seen. Ambassador of the was true to her word. Her secret messages to Daniel Cole revealed everything. The tribute system that the council enforced was not just unfair, it was crushing. Species like the had been paying for thousands of years. Their resources were stripped from their worlds. Their young people were sent to work in mines and factories. They had no voice in council decisions. They had no power to resist. But they remembered what freedom felt like. The oldest among them still told stories of the time before the council found them. And now, for the first time they had hope. Daniel shared this information with the Alliance Assembly. The picture it painted was clear. The council was not a united government of equals. It was an empire where a few ancient species ruled over everyone else. The tribute system was slavery with a different name, and the minor species were waiting for someone to stand up and challenge it. "We can end this," Daniel told the assembly. "Not just for humanity, for everyone." The second invitation from the council arrived 6 months after the battle. This time, the tone was very different. High Arbiter did not demand or command. He requested. He invited. He asked humanity to return to Axiom Prime for discussions. No conditions, no threats, just an invitation to talk. Daniel Cole assembled a larger delegation this time. 50 representatives from across human space. Admiral Laura brought 20 warships as an escort. They would wait in orbit around Axiom Prime, a silent reminder of what humanity could do if pushed. The journey back to the council station felt different from the first time. Daniel was not walking into the unknown anymore. He knew what he was facing. He knew what he wanted, and he knew that he had allies waiting inside. The council chambers had been changed. The central platform where petitioners were expected to stand had been raised. A proper seat had been added for the human ambassador. Small changes, but they meant everything. The council was acknowledging humanity as an equal for the first time. The 17 platforms were still arranged in their circle, but the atmosphere was different. Warlord sat in sullen silence, his reputation shattered by his defeat. Several of the minor species looked at the humans with barely hidden excitement. Something was about to change, and everyone could feel it. High Arbiter spoke first. His crystalline form pulsed with calm light as his voice filled the chamber. "We have had time to reflect on recent events. It has come to our attention that the expansion accords, written 10,000 years ago, may not account for circumstances such as yours. Humanity developed independently. Humanity was never contacted. Humanity cannot reasonably be held to laws they did not know existed." Daniel listened carefully. This was already more than he had expected. Continued. "We propose a new arrangement. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. You would have voting rights equal to any established species. Your colonies would remain yours. Your fleet would remain yours. In exchange, you would participate in collective defense and share certain technological developments." It was a generous offer. By council standards, it was unprecedented. Any other species would have accepted immediately and been grateful for the chance. Daniel stood up from his seat. "Before I respond, I want to add a condition of our own." His crystalline body shifted slightly. "What condition?" "The tribute system ends. Immediately. Every species currently providing forced labor or resources to the elder races is released from those obligations. Today." The chamber exploded. Warlord roared in fury. Several of the elder species began shouting protests. The platforms pulsed with angry light. For a moment, it seemed like the entire negotiation was about to collapse. But then another voice cut through the chaos. "The support this condition." Ambassador stood on her small platform, her gray fur bristling but her voice steady. She had been silent for 6,000 years. She was done being silent. "The tribute system has cost my people more than we can ever measure. We have paid and paid and paid. We have nothing left to give. If humanity is offering to end this, then we stand with humanity." One by one, other voices joined her. "The support this condition. The support this condition. The support this condition." Platform after platform, the minor species declared their support. Species that had suffered under council rule for thousands of years. Species that had watched their children taken and their resources stripped. Species that had never had the strength to resist on their own. Now they were not alone. Raised a crystalline limb for silence. The chamber slowly grew quiet. The High Arbiter looked at Daniel Cole for a long moment. Something that might have been respect flickered in his ancient form. "You did not come here simply to win concessions for humanity, did you?" Daniel met his gaze without flinching. "No, we came to change things for everyone." The vote was held that day. It was not even close. 11 species voted in favor of the new terms. Only 6 voted against. The tribute system was abolished. The expansion accords were rewritten. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as a servant or a subject, but as an equal. In the weeks that followed, Ambassador visited Earth as the first official guest of the new alliance. She walked through human cities and marveled at what she saw. A species that had built itself from nothing. A species that had refused to bow. A species that had changed the galaxy. "How did you do it?" she asked Daniel during a quiet dinner. "How did you find the courage to say no when no one else would?" Daniel thought about the question for a long time before answering. "We had nothing to lose," he said finally. "When we walked into that council chamber for the first time, they had not taken anything from us yet. If we had accepted their terms, we would have surrendered everything that made us who we are. Our freedom, our dignity, our future. So we walked away. And it turned out that sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do." Nodded slowly. "My people have forgotten that lesson. We accepted the chains because we thought we had no choice. You reminded us that there is always a choice." Across the galaxy, the old order was crumbling. The tribute ships stopped flying. The labor camps closed. Species that had been servants began to remember what freedom felt like. And at the center of it all stood humanity, young and foolish and impossibly brave. They had walked into the halls of ancient power and said one simple word: "No." And that word had changed everything.